With Europe pledging to spend hundreds of millions of euros on defense and infrastructure, we now see people coming out of the woodwork advocating to destroy the welfare state to pay for the military buildup, like this guy from the Financial Times. And while this is generally good, and I support heavily the move away from austerity politics and towards the idea that we can actually have governments spend money to do things, and I also find hilarious that we have a Goatsy logo for our Rearm Europe campaign, we must immediately reject the idea that the only way we can defend ourselves is by literally destroying the state around us and the things people need to have a good life in Europe, and that they would be trying to defend in the case of war. Why would you be giving your life to fight for your country if your country is constantly cutting away everything that makes your life good to live? It makes no sense. For decades, economists and experts across the world have been arguing that the lack of spending and investment by European countries, especially in defense and infrastructure, healthcare, you name it, they have not been spending money on it, has been incredibly bad for this continent. And the big giant Draghi report that came out a few months back said exactly this, that the lack of spending, this constant need to never spend money, and this ideological belief fundamentally that governments should not be spending money is the major problem. And what has happened in this defense buildup, because of the crisis, that idea has been jettisoned. So when people are trying to drag us back into the idea that the only way any government can do something is by cutting social spending, you need to see that they are being insane at this point. But we know we can. We saw the US do the New Deal and the buildup to become the arsenal of democracy, selling weapons to defeat fascism in the 1940s. This is what can happen. You can spend money to create and propel an economy forward. You can pay for defense and social spending. You can improve both of these things simultaneously, and you must, or you get to a situation where your internal opposition, those far-right parties in Europe who are arguing not just against military buildup, but also arguing for alignment with Donald Trump and Putin, they do not want you to ever build up these things, because it is better for them that the social systems collapse. It is better for them that we are unable to defend themselves, because when people lose faith in the ability for liberal democracy and the state to do anything, they'll start voting for them. And that is what they fundamentally believe and what we have seen over the last few elections. It's also important to understand that other countries, other major economies, have given up on following the rules of the game. The economy that is happening in the US right now is completely bonkers, with running an operation that is entirely on tariffs, with Donald Trump's idea to bring all companies inside of the US for production and sale. Or look at the Russian Federation that runs a sanctioned economy that just is operating purely off of foreign income coming in through illegal oil sales. Or for a much longer period of time, China has been running a very intense amount of economy where the government constantly is spending and constantly is doing stimulus to effectively keep up the entire system. We don't live in the world that these conservatives believe we do, where all we can do is be afraid of debt, and all we can do is cut at the government. Because at the end of the day, who does the central bank owe money to? God? Rearm Europe also needs to be a social rearmament of Europe, one that involves having companies not just profit endlessly off of the vast amount of money they're about to receive. We need to have conversations about having state-owned and run munitions factories. This is vital so that we can keep money spent on defense within the defense system and not going out to private shareholders. More importantly, we should reformulate private companies as limited profit companies, which require those companies to reinvest most of their income and profits right back into their business, and they only can take a limited amount of profit. In Austria, this is used in the housing industry to wondrous effect, and they are only allowed to take 3% of profit. Everything else has to be reinvested back into their company or expansion, either making things better or making things bigger. And that is something that we could adopt within defensive spending. It's also important that young people, liberals, progressive, Greens, everyone who considers themselves on board with democracy, to put themselves in the field of national defense and security. These are vital fields that have long been places for right-wing people to find a natural spacing because of how they feel about politics. But these spaces do not have to be like that. They can become more progressive. They can become part of the values that we hold true and that we say in Europe that we are fighting for. Equality, liberty. These values we need to bring to the institutions, and that doesn't change unless we have people going into those institutions. And likewise, this requires a cultural shift to not look down upon people in our progressive political ideologies who choose to go into national service, who choose to go into working in defense and security. Because if we do not have those positions ourselves, someone from an ideology we really don't like might have it. This is all serious, and this is all happening. We don't have a choice at this point, but we can choose how we want things to go. Politics doesn't end just because we're in a crisis. We need to take control and push forward to our vision of what rearming Europe could mean and what it should mean for all of us. These are some engagements so people see, or else I won't get paid. Thank you.